All right, there we go. Let's get everybody else up in here before it's officially time to take off today. Got the spinning wheels. They changed the format of Streamer. I don't know if you saw that. They kind of changed a bunch of the background stuff, but it's here. It's we're good. I think everything's running up. Hopefully, we have all the chats, the channels going. Is that everybody? Looks like it. Okay, we're good. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is Thursday morning, last show of the week. We are 2 weeks from the NFL draft. It's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, joined by, as always, on these morning shows out there on the opposite coast. A little bit later in the day, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how are things out there in warmer Georgia?
Things are good. It's a gorgeous spring here in Metro Atlanta, so enjoying it, getting outside a lot, and watching some football. So I think we are 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, and if you are a Broncos fan, you don't pick for 2 weeks in a day, but that's all right. We're here to help ease that time go a little better.
Yeah, absolutely. The Broncos are going to. Oh, we'll talk about that. I don't think they're going to end up getting up into the first round, but some interesting data and talking points about the Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis teams of the Saints trading up a good bit versus the contrast of George Paton. And we'll get into that, what everybody thinks here. I mean, it could be a little bit of column A, column B, but it'll be fun. And we're going to, all the speculation and stuff, the speculation, the anticipation up to the draft is half the fun, honestly, talking about all the possibilities.
And then the hindsight, looking back at it and grading it and saying, well,
Yeah.
you said this and who said that and who got it right and who didn't. That is half the fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point we should probably, this is more like summertime talk, but like looking back on the 2021 draft class, our thoughts and how things played out for 2022 as well. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Obviously, the content machine keeps on rolling, as does the chat. Kevin Gray says, good morning, Broncos country. Nick Scott, how's everyone's doing? Doing pretty well. Says Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life, and Buckham. All three. There you go. Going for the trifecta. David Eukin coming in saying, I don't care what the Broncos do as long as they get the best players for the position they are looking for. Yeah, that's a possibility. And looks like I'm about to walk into the sun again as my camera is waffling back and forth, but that's okay. We got Jeremy Sean saying, morning, boys. With only 5 picks, I only see us trading up for a potential impact starter. Trading back is probably more likely. And now I'm dark again. Goodness gracious. But yeah, I think all of it is a possibility for the Broncos. And I guess we might as well just get into some of the data here, Scott. So PFF did an article here pretty recently, and they had a couple factoids here. So they looked at draft trends dating back to 2011. And this one I thought was absolutely wild. The Saints, since 2011, have traded up 16 times and traded down 0 times, which is pretty wild. You don't see a lot of teams operate that way, but what a strong difference that is. And then the Vikings are one of the top 3 teams since 2011, which is most of where George Paton's been in the last 10 years, have had 44 draft day trades, most of them coming as trade downs. So really a stark contrast in philosophy. Scott, you joined right after George Paton was announced as the Broncos general manager, I believe. And he talked a lot about trading down and getting drafts. It's about having more shots at the draft board or the dart board versus anything, which is very opposite, which we've seen from the Saints.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. You know, there's always exceptions, but on the whole, I tend to agree with George Paton on this one. You know, I ranked players for a long time with scout high school guys coming out and recruiting. Then we had a formula that put together that did automated rankings, and there was always a question of quantity versus quality, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the criticisms that we got at Scout was that we focused too much on quantity, that I leaned a little bit too heavy as I helped influence those rankings, that we leaned a little bit too heavy towards quantity. But that's with high school kids, for goodness sakes. You know, and we've seen it with college guys who, you know, I grew up with, you know, Jimmy Johnson was one of the first dynasties that came along, and he came up by trading down, taking a first and turning him into 2 seconds, because the difference between, with exceptions, of course, the number 25 guy and the number 40 guy, it's this much. For those of you listening, I'm holding my fingers really close together. And frankly, the 40 guy has about as good a chance as being better than the guy that was taken at 25 anyway. So give me 40 and 41 instead of 25, and I probably have a better chance of being better. So that kind of came into the thing, you know, talking about the 5-star, 4-stars. It's like, I'd rather have 2 4-star guys as a recruit than 1 5-star guy. I just would, you know, it was the same type of philosophy. So for me, At this level, yes, I agree. I would rather have more picks because it is an imperfect science. It is a human being you're dealing with, and they develop differently. Some of these guys in college and pros, you don't see them, especially the big guys. They're not fully who they are going to be until they're 27, 28 years old.
Mhm.
I'd love to have more players like that. I agree with George Paton on this one for the most part.
Yeah, and to add to a little context, that I think there's been a few studies recently conducted by a lot of the stat nerds out there, but the sweet spot a lot of times in the draft for teams accumulating value, there's been a lot of value in press for the middle of the first round because you have like a group of like 14, 16 players the first round grade. So if you can get like the last one of those, no doubt consensus first round grade guys, there's a lot of value to that in a specific draft. There's also, I think, value from round 2 to like the first 5 to 10 picks in the 4th round. I agree with you about the darts, and you mentioned day 2 picks a lot. Day 2 picks, I mean, you also mentioned the Cowboys. How about the Patriots? All those years adding day 2 picks, trading down and getting future 2s, 3s, and just taking away at those quality players. But there is a massive drop off at about like halfway through the 4th round where I mean, I don't think there's too much of a difference between a 5th rounder and a 7th rounder
Right.
at that point. So there is obviously a little bit of nuance and context to that. But like the Broncos trade down and get more darts. Well, why don't they trade their 3rd for, every single 7th round pick? Honest to God, I might rather have the singular 3rd round pick than all the 7ths because
there is a line, and as you said, I was talking a lot about, top 100 picks.
Yes.
I'd rather have 3 top 100 picks than maybe 130.
Yeah.
Now of course, you give me the chance to pick a top 5 guy, that's different. There are guys that are out there that
Blue
are just
chippers.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And those come at a premium, of course. But there's only a few of those guys. And despite the fact that we hear the phrase generational 10 times a season now, no, you don't. Generational actually means it's supposed to mean what it means once in a generation, not 5 different guys every year. It's one of the most overused terms you hear now.
Yeah.
But there are, the top 3 guys, when you're talking about some of the best athletes in the world, and you can get your pick of 1 or 2 of those guys. Yeah, they're different. They are. But for the most part, on the whole, I agree with trading down instead of trading up.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting. I don't remember who it was that was talking about it. Wish I could credit them, but they were talking about like the first, like 120 picks is kind of the line that teams have drawn. Because after like the first 100 to 120, good luck. And we kind of saw it last year with the Broncos in the 5th round. We had 3 5th round picks. Cool. That's a lot of darts. DeLarian Turner-Yell, I mean, he's had some special team snaps, but honest to God, I couldn't even point him out if you showed me. I don't remember what his jersey number is out there. Montreal Washington, you talked about a specialist who's already maybe going to be replaced as a specialist. And Luke Wattenberg just looked completely overmatched, and he's going to be 25 this season already. So obviously small sample size, one class, one team, but there is, I think, a little bit of a line there for, the darts versus not having darts conversation.
Learning as I'm going, you always try and learn and get experience. The game changes. I try and learn as I go and pay attention to what's working and what's not working. So let's take a look at the Atlanta Falcons and their 5th round under Terry Fontenot. Their 5th round picks in the last 2 seasons have been Tyler Algier, Taquan Graham, Ade Ogundeji, and Avery Williams. That's 3 for 4.
That's
3 for 4
good.
really good players out of that. One of them's a specialist. That's what you tried to do with Montreal Washington.
Yeah.
So if in the back end is when I'm trying to get players at devalued positions that may have fallen there because they may be a specialist, or they may be a center. They may be a running back. The fact that you hit on Taquan Graham, an interior lineman in the 5th, that's an exception.
Yeah.
But if I can take those guys and look, when we're doing mocks all the time, who's falling in those spots? Running backs, interior linemen,
tight ends,
and what now?
Tight ends sometimes
tight
as well.
end, yeah, the devalued positions. That's where I want to go. A guy who I think is more talented than, and y'all have heard me say it before. The edge. I'm not getting an edge in the 3rd. It's just you might, but it's not going to be an impact guy. If it was a guy that was going to come in and probably make an immediate impact at an edge, he's already gone in the top 50 picks. But I can get some of those devalued positions lower down the board.
And to the point of edge rusher, a lot of it has to do with it's a very quantifiable position of the haves versus the have-nots because it's so much dependent on the athletic
Right.
measurables.
It's a
And
height, weight, speed position.
yes, and teams are good at evaluating height, weight, speed because it's
It's
quantifiable.
not hard.
Yeah,
He's big
so
and fast. Okay, that's a pretty good. It's a lot easier than trying to pick out one out of 30 different 6'3", 310-pound guys
yeah, it's like centers,
that are running
linebackers.
140s.
Yeah, exactly. Final point here about day 3 draft strategies and philosophies, and this is something that I think a lot of teams have done a pretty good job. I think the Patriots were one of the first teams to really do this. But let's say you have a lot of day 3 picks or late day 2 and day 3. You take, okay, we need to come out of this draft with a good player on the interior defensive line. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take one at pick 90 and we're going to take one at pick 200. Now, the guy at pick 200 doesn't have great odds, but guess what? I just increased my odds of having a serviceable contributor at that position year 1 because I doubled the position. And teams I've seen do that a lot with the day 3 of the draft after taking somebody earlier day 3 or late day 2.
Yeah, it's all odds based,
Probabilities,
and that's where it gets into the more players I have, the more chance I have to get it right. That one of these guys is going to step up. David has stepped up for us early. Thanks for being patient, David, as Nick and I were going through some philosophy there while the chat was opening up a little bit. He said, would you mind Trey Palmer in the very late 3rd or early 4th? See you tonight, Nick. So I think Nick's doing a guest spot with David Cromwell on his podcast tonight. When you start talking about valuable positions, when we talk monetarily, wide receiver counts. That's one of those positions of value. And when you're getting down into, well, and you just heard me say, well, I can't get a 3rd round edge. Those guys are already gone. Well, what about wide receiver? There are more wide receivers available that have traits, because finding a guy that can run a 4.4 at 6 foot isn't as hard as finding a guy that can do that at 6'5", 240.
Yeah.
Trey Palmer is one of those traits guys. He's a 4.36 guy. And frankly, David, I think he's not just a traits guy. I think he's a pretty damned good receiver. I like his route running. I like his hands. He's got adequate size. He's not huge, but he's fast. He's a 4.36 fast guy who runs good routes and has good hands. Would I be happy with him in the 3rd or early 4th? Yes, I would.
Yeah, I think 3rd is a little early for me. Personally, I think there's going to be some other guys available that I like a little bit more. But if Broncos trade back late 3rd, early 4th to get that speed option there, that would be fine with me. You guys have heard me on here if you listened before, but he absolutely torched my Iowa Hawkeyes. All Iowa had to do was win against a terrible Nebraska team at home, and they'd go to win in the Big Ten West and go play in the Big Ten championship. And Trey Palmer went off for like 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, Iowa was down to their 5th cornerback, but still, he haunts my dreams a little bit. So good player.
There was a player the year before that was a wide receiver from Tennessee that had a similar name, because every time I see Trey Palmer, I think he's from Tennessee. So I'm getting him. I know who he is. He's a 4.36, 6 foot guy that I have video on at Senior Bowl. But by God, I've got Tennessee in my head every time I see Trey Palmer. Maybe it's that big T at the beginning with Trey.
Yeah, he transferred from LSU, a good player at LSU and a former 4-star recruit. So interesting player. Personally, I like guys like Marvin Mims, Jaden Reed, Tyler Scott a little bit more. I'm really not sure what to make of Jalen Hyatt. I feel like he's all over the board. He had some good production, but he plays in that make-believe offense out there, and he doesn't face any press, and he's kind of a weird player, gets redirected really easily. Also, Scott, just talking wide receivers real quick, going over the weights of this class. Is this the smallest wide receiver class of all time? Like just by weight and size? I mean, there's literally nobody who is that big. Quentin Johnson, the big X-ish, maybe he's more of a Z in this class, but only 208. Mingo's 220. Tillman's 213. But you got a number of 170s all throughout the draft. 165 Dell. It's a tiny wide receiver class. Position might be changing a little bit. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, you go big and fast, then you go small, then it cycles. It cycles around. What never goes out of style is big and fast. You know, if you've got them, if you've got the 6'5" guy that, the 6'3" plus guy that's running 4.4s, you're going to take him over the 6 foot guy that's running 4.4s. It's just, it always plays. They're just not always available. Like we said, body types. Those guys they're a little more rare. Says Michael Ranquillo says, good morning, Scott and Nick, breaking the ice for us over there on Facebook with some stars on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Thank you, Michael. It is good to see you, and thanks again for all of your support. And Aki Dragon, as I was talking about, one of the first real dynasties I grew up with was the Cowboys. He says, forgot the 49ers with Walsh. It hit the back of my mind. But the 80s dynasties with Walsh was in my like early teens. So I'm like 12 years old, 13 years old when I really started paying attention to the team building aspect and stuff. 89, I think, was when Troy Aikman was drafted number 1 overall. He may have been 80, 88, 89. I was 15, 16 years old. So I was watching those teams build and those go. So I really started following how that was done for me, more beginning with Jimmy Johnson and the Dallas Cowboys, as opposed to just being a kid fan of the game and what the 49ers were doing with Bill Walsh, which was amazing. I loved watching those teams, obviously.
Before my time, my first memory is Broncos winning Super Bowl 32. It's honestly one of my actual first memories. I was 5 years old.
Yeah, I remember I'll remember that in 6th grade because there was a 7th grader ahead of me, and he was just kind of an a-hole and talking trash about the Miami Dolphins. I said, I like the 49ers. I'm 12. I'm like, I like this guy. He laughs in my face, one of those real fake laughs when I mention these players. And I was bigger than he is. I should have whipped his ass. 49ers took care of it for me. He didn't talk too much after that. They beat the hell out of the flurry Dan Marino Miami Dolphins, and it was great. Not that I hold grudges or anything.
To this day, Dave Glassman.
30-something years ago. Kid's name was Tommy. I still want to punch him in the face.
Screw you, Tommy. Let's get a screw you, Tommy, in the chat. Dave Glassman.
Thank you, Bill Walsh and the 49ers. I remember that 35 years later.
Don't wrong Scott, guys. He's got that Irish grudge. Dave Glassman coming in with the hearts here, talking about that sounds like an Irish name, maybe Scottish. JD coming in saying, good morning, Broncos fam, lifelong Broncos fan at 32 years old today. Happy birthday, JD. Hope you have a great one, and don't celebrate too hard. 32, you're getting a little bit old. It's a little bit harder to pick yourself back up. Speaking from experience there. Michaela Israel saying, good morning, my Broncos for breakfast mug will be here today. Woohoo. Well, woohoo indeed. That's awesome. Coffee time, and it's always the best. Coffee today brought to you by Lion Coffee. Patrick out there, unofficial sponsor. He is sending me some Lion Coffee stickers. That way I can hike them up to Mailbox Peak and put some, slap some all over that mailbox. I think it's about a 9-mile hike.
I think it'd fit probably right here. I think there's enough space on this big forehead of mine. Lion Coffee right there.
I think that'd be good. Let's get a tattoo for Scott. If we get enough supers in there, the Lion Coffee tattoo. Zay Sanders, good morning. MHH did a mock. The Broncos got Tyreek Stevenson at 67, traded down, and then got Tippmann at 87. Zach Harrison and Kendra Miller to be added later. Hope we do something similar. I think that is a mock drafts are fun, but this is why they are exercises rather than anything. Who knows what happens? But I think Tippmann at 87 is pretty unlikely, personally speaking, but we'll see. And the rest of that does pretty damn good. So who knows? There's always surprises in the draft. Last year, we were mocking Tyreek Rowland to the Broncos pretty religiously at pick 96, and he ends up going early 5th round or mid 5th round, actually. The Broncos took Delarian Turner-Yell 1 pick before.
We were right. He should have been taken higher than he went.
Yeah, a lot of people were right. Not to pat ourselves too hard on the back, but sometimes the NFL just overthinks these guys, especially that late in the draft. I mean, just take a shot on the athlete.
Yeah,
unless there's something else going on.
Long arms running 4.3s playing corner. Okay.
What's going on? Keith Brugman, he says, good morning first, and also says, my prediction has been this. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver, is a draft day trade. Gains picks that we can use to move up. I'm not sure what the value is right now for Cortland Sutton. I know there's a little bit of talk yesterday that I came across about maybe packaging Judy for a early 2nd round pick that could then be used on a tight end or a center. But I don't know. The Broncos are going to do something. I'm very little doubt the Broncos are going to do something on draft day that's going to have us talking and be like, oh, well, we talked about that, but really didn't predict that happening. So be interesting. I think it's interesting, too, the position about that potential trade up. It hasn't just been center, Scott. It's been tight end, too. There's been some Darnell Washington, Luke Musgrave talk for the Broncos.
You got one pass-catching big guy right now. One. Are you counting on Albert Okwuegbunam right now? No. So after Dulcich, what do you have at tight end? And he's a big receiver. He's not going to be in there blocking tight end. And all of the moves have been in there to run the ball down your damn throats. Who's your tight end there?
Manhurts. Pure blocker.
There you go. So another one that might be. I forgot he was signed. Thank you for the stars, Keith. Appreciate it. Looking forward to the draft. And David Cromwell comes back and he says, neither Gary Payton's or Sean Payton's philosophy is 100% correct on trading up or trading down. It all depends on the state of your roster. And it's not a rule. That's the thing. It's a philosophy. Like I said, on the whole, I agree with accumulating more picks because of the probability factor of the more players you have, the more chances you have to get it right on the whole. there are exceptions. Scott, you're not going to pass up, the number one overall when you got, let's see, a Myles Garrett type. No, I'm not. No, I'm not giving up number one overall for Trevor Lawrence. No, I'm keeping it.
Caleb
the teams
Williams.
that have 1 and 2 next year, if they need quarterbacks, they ain't coming out no matter what you offer them.
1, 2, and 3 maybe. Marvin Harrison Jr. is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there are exceptions. There are exceptions. So a philosophy means a general guideline, not necessarily I'm sticking to this. That's a hard and fast rule. And if you're not flexible on this, you're not going to get to where they have gone.
Yeah. Without a doubt, Donald Wilson Jr. coming in with $2. I don't recognize this name, DWJ, but appreciate you, Donald. I hope you're doing well. We also got our guy, Gary Leeds Palmer, leading us off here, saying, morning, guys. What's your favorite pick at 67 for the Broncos? Go Broncos, Denver Broncos for life. My favorite pick for the Broncos at pick 67. God, it's so hard to answer that, Gary, because what is it? It's factorial 67 of the different probabilities of how the draft could play out, or who knows? So that far down, it could be anything. I would absolutely love to get Julius Brents down that far. I think the Broncos cornerback spot is a massive concern right now. We are one injury away from being back in the black hole that was the secondary in the pre-Surtain era, where we finished the year playing Darnell Motley and Ojemudia, and we're just getting Adam Pac-Man Jones off the street wearing 24. What a travesty that was. So I think cornerback is one where I'm like, ugh, yikes. There's going to be a number of options there. I do really like Julius Brents.
Didn't we get Joe Tippmann in our first mock?
Yes.
At 67? Yeah, I'll take that. This guy could go in the first round. I'll take that one at center, plug and play.
Yeah.
Done. And Gary, there's some news just kind of reaffirming what we've been saying, but we call it third-party validation when it starts getting out into, the real world. ESPN has an article today about ESPN Plus, top draft needs, some of the things we've been hearing. And Jordan Reed says, this might not be the biggest piece of news in the world, but the Denver Broncos are doing their due diligence on centers. He quoted as saying, Lloyd Cushenberry III has been inconsistent, and that's where I joked with Nick. I said, I disagree. I think he's been very consistent, incredibly consistent, consistently not good enough. And they will be looking, at least at the very least, to bring in some competition to push that spot. The problem is they draft high third. I think you can get competition at high third. I think you can get an upgrade at high third. Yeah. So one of those centers, if they're there, would be very, very interesting to me, Gary. Just like you are. Thank you, sir. Most interesting man on MHH.
Yeah, we got a bunch coming in. I want to say hi to some people. Greg Smith, good morning to you. Zach Powers, Chase Wellner's in the house as well. Good to see you guys. Richard Miles in the house. Morning, Scott. Oh, we got Roderick Cook here to trigger Scott saying, that precious draft capital. Got to get the pinky out. Yep, there you go. Crazy Hayes coming in saying the best MHH crew, go Hawks and go Broncos. This is my guy. Now we're talking. Now you really got into it there. We have Donald Williamson. He's dropped another super, but he said, I read Latavius Murray has went to Buffalo for talks. Your thoughts? I read yesterday that it seems like the Latavius Murray stuff is not going to happen for coming back for the Broncos, but we'll see. If the Broncos don't get another running back in the draft, they're going to have to bring in somebody. If Latavius Murray is still out there, he's an option, but he's one of the plethora of options that are in that circle of running backs that are, not good enough to really go out there and spend big money for. Older, you can sign him for a 1-year close to vet min contract. I appreciate what Latavius Murray did down the stretch last year. Mm-hmm. One of the few bright spots. He's a very replaceable, findable type of player.
How did we get him last year?
Practice squad.
Practice squad. He was on somebody else's practice squad, and he came in and did well. Yeah. I will say it a zillion times, and I'm on this bandwagon now. Like I said, I grew up when the running back and linebacker positions were cool. They're not anymore. They're easy to find. You don't need to spend precious capital, whether it's picks or money, on the running back position in order to have quality. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just how I've come around to that, Nick.
That's how the NFL is playing right now. Now, obviously, good players still lead the day, but it's going to be interesting. Mark Schrader, good morning. Nick and Scott, good to see you. Elliot, Sean, good morning to my favorite Broncos show. Go Atlanta too, I guess. We'll take that. Thanks for the content. We're
appreciate
here for
the
that.
Stars, Elliot. I feel like that's one of the semi-newer names, so appreciate you coming in with some stars for us. So good morning back to you. ATL is a good spot. That's why there's so many people that flock here that, come from other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Jasmine coming in saying, "Sup, Broncos fam." We also got our guy coming in. Oh, I was about to click we can't get rid of those Twitch ones, unfortunately, but what can you do? Peter Middleton, good evening from Hong Kong. Hope you're doing well out there in Hong Kong. Seems like there's a little bit of uncertainty and unsettling stuff going out there in that part of the world. So hopefully you are safe. Got our guy Gyla Maples coming in. First, he has this comment over on YouTube saying, "Don't understand why the media continues to go after Russ. He was early at the facility and they make it a big deal. He's worked hard, go Broncos." And Gyla Maples also the $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate you, Gyla. Why does the media keep going after Russ, Scott?
Who was it? Emmanuel Acho. He says because he doesn't fight back. He's an easy target right now. I've got other reasons that I won't get into on this, but he's a little too howdy-doody almost. He's an easy target and he doesn't fight back.
He's character acting a little bit the star quarterback of a high school film sometimes is the vibe that I get. Like the straight A student, Sunday school, whatever type. But he's low-hanging fruit, and people are going to continue to kick the dog wallets down. And until he plays better,
Are we getting after him for showing up early for OTAs?
No matter what he does, until he plays better, he's going to get it. So hopefully he plays better. Also, Sean Payton's not really helping this either. I mean, he had a chance to, multiple chances to really, praise Russell Wilson and be like, listen, that's our guy right now. I believe he can be great again. And Sean Payton, every chance he gets, distances himself from Russell Wilson. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. Hopefully he plays better this year, just given where the Broncos are at. But that's one of the biggest storylines in the entire NFL this season is what happens with Russell Wilson this season and going forward. Big storyline in here. Jasmine coming in 1999, big time super giver, always supportive of the show. We really do appreciate you, Jasmine. Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate the picture as well of you and the young one there smiling. But we got says, "Morning, super excited about the draft from Russell Wilson, looking slim and trim. Comeback season. Also, my husband and I found out we're having a baby boy. Oh God, that's awesome. I didn't even get to that yet.
We're going round."
Yeah, goodness.
Russell's going slim and trim. Jasmine's going round. I love it.
Be a Broncos fan and we'll join the podcast with you. Well, that's awesome. You can always, shout out to also the podcast listeners after the fact. If you up late nursing or anything, dealing with a screaming infant, you can find us after the fact on Apple Podcast and whatnot as I dial back my brightness a little bit as I enter the sun because my hand got too close to the camera. I think is what happened there. But Jasmine, we appreciate it.
Nick's getting too close to the camera. It's getting too bright in here. Nick, we answered a similar question, but did we hit Donald on this one and get a chance to say thank you for the super chat? There was a very similar question, but I didn't sure if we mentioned Donald specifically.
I feel like we talked to Donald and then he asked it again with the super. So thank you coming in for the $5. Broncos are probably looking to draft his replacement, and if they don't find a running back to replace him, they'll go back in the pool with one of those similar type of running backs. So
yeah, again, we did hit it and just wanted to make sure we said thank you for coming in like that, Donald.
Yeah, appreciate you, Donald. It seems like a somewhat of a newer name, so shout out to you coming in and showing the support and the love. We'll show it right back when you do that. Lance Dorian says, "What players do you guys think could be on the block if Denver trades up? And what player would be worth trading up for? What players could be on the block if the Broncos trade up? I could see Lloyd Cushenberry being on the block if the Broncos trade up. Not to kick a guy while he's down, but he's the last one of the last tenants of that last team. 2 regimes ago, actually drafted by John Elway. So definitely somebody maybe could be a conditional 7th kind of thing or a 6th for Cushenberry and a 7th. Maybe also one of these edge rushers could come on the block. Let's say the Broncos love an edge rusher that falls in the draft. They have a lot of bodies right now at edge, but maybe not a lot of guys they absolutely love. So maybe a Jacob Martin to clear some cap space, maybe a Jonathan Cooper, who I believe only has 2 years of control left. So those are some ones that stick out to me as could be traded if anything happens. Oh, and of course, one of the wide receivers. Let's say the Broncos love a wide receiver that falls to them. Okay, KJ Hamler, we hopefully go be healthy in your life. Live long and prosper, right? I know he's dealt with a lot of other stuff too, so hopefully you can be okay. But that could be a position also where you see somebody moved if the Broncos bring in a early wide receiver.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys that are trade candidates, and I'm not talking about we're going to trade this guy for a future conditional 7th round in 2024. Those you don't know those. But as
Mm-hmm.
far as actually getting something of value back, the two names you've heard were Sutton and Judy, and the Broncos are holding out, as they should, in my opinion. Judy, unless Judy has said, I want out, I am not re-signing, you're going to have to tag me, and maybe you don't want to, and he's a problem, then again, a lot of this talk didn't make sense to me from a return, an ROI for a return on investment type of deal. So there could be something else going on. Sean Payton comes in and says, I don't like these guys' attitude. They're not my type of players. We need to move them. Then that's one thing. But as far as what you would get back in return for what you're giving up on paper, I haven't seen it as being worth it. Mark Schrader, always worth it to us, coming in from Texas. Thank you, sir, with the super chat. Much love. Hope you are doing well this morning.
Yeah, Mark coming in big. Mark is one of our consistent contributors, definitely on the Mount Rushmore of contributors on the show. We really appreciate you. Mark, also good guy. We have actually a little bit of a connection. His brother lives in the hometown that I was born and raised in and lived the first 18 years of my life. He knows a little bit of his Eastern Iowa geography. So talked a little bit about that. Although his brother is a Cowboys and a Nebraska fan, which is not a great combo in my book. I know we have the Nebraska fan in the chat here who I just love to kick Nebraska while they're down because they'll bounce back eventually. Just too much money and resources there for them to be as poor as they've been. Robbie Red coming in 199 saying, morning horsey fans. Thoughts on the YouTube Sunday ticket price? I don't want to.
My blood.
Yeah, God, it's unbelievably expensive. If anybody wants to contribute to the show to give it by us ones, that'd be great. But
about $400.
It's really expensive. That obviously shows how much YouTube paid also to get that. It's also more expensive if you're going to get Red Zone added to it, I think. So yeah, I will be.
Yeah, it's too rich for my blood. I'll buy the NFL.com pass again, and it's it's $100, and I can watch all the games on demand. They've got a YouTube app. I mean, they've got a Roku app. I can sit in there and watch them, condensed games. It might make sense to me if I was out of market and that was the only way I could watch my team. But even then, 162 games on MLB Pass back in the day was, I think it might be 150 now, was $99 for 162 games. About 5 years ago, Nick, there was, a lot of domestic violence stuff and everything going on. I said that the NFL had reached critical mass where they had gotten to a point where they just didn't give a damn about the customers, about the fans. I was wrong. It's still growing, but this is a type of thing that will turn you off. They'll still make their money, but $400, if I'm out of market and I've got $400, do I want to watch my team or do I want to go do something else? As that price goes off, you will find a line where more people start going and doing something else. The price of going to the games and the tickets is astronomical, that it's become an expensive way to enjoy your entertainment. Those are my thoughts since you asked. Thank you, Robbie.
I'll still find ways to watch the game. I'll put it that way. I'll leave it at that. And that's probably one reason it's so expensive, because a lot of other people find other avenues. And I have two computers now, so I can probably use my old computer to, go to websites that are a little less, a little more concerning for the streams. And I'll leave it at that. But Robbie Red, thank you so much. Ryan says, Nick lived in Clarinda, Iowa for a while. Where are you from? I'm originally from Davenport, Iowa, and then hopped the river there, the Mississippi River, to go to college in Rock Island, which is the Augustana Vikings, the college home of former MVP quarterback Ken Anderson, Cincinnati Bengals. If you remember that, it's kind of a small school. He's showed up a lot of times out there. I think really nice guy.
Was Ken Anderson too soon, or was he a member of that famed class of 1983 quarterbacks?
I do not. I think he was earlier than that.
I feel like he was older than that already.
I think he's older than that.
But it was, it was Marino. I think Tony Eason was in that class. Jim Kelly was in that class. There's like 5 of them.
Yep. Yeah, that was an unbelievable class, and still, you didn't have how many guys go in the. You didn't have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10. We've been talking about that a lot with the draft here. Jeremy saying Nick Bootlegger Kendall. That's how I like my whiskey. But Benjamin Flores, morning men, good to see you. Jeremy saying go Big Red. I'm more of a juicy fruit kind of guy. No, I know he's talking about
in that class. You may have heard of him.
Who was it?
John Elway was in that class.
Oh, number 1 overall. Yeah. I thought you
might have heard of him. John Elway, Eric Dickerson was in that class. Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, Darrell Green. Good gracious.
Great class.
Yeah, quarterbacks. Todd Blackledge went 7 overall. His Jim Kelly, Tony Eason. Let me see. That was just first rounder. Ken O'Brien, I think, was who I was thinking of, not Ken Anderson. Ken O'Brien was who I was thinking of.
Yeah, Ken Anderson, good quarterback. Did a lot of. I think he
Yeah,
worked a lot with Cam Newton.
Keith Rugman came in. He's like, he was drafted in 71. Yeah, I was thinking of O'Brien.
Okay, yeah, he's a shout out to Ken Anderson, good dude. DJ Capo coming in saying Broncos should draft the Tulane running back. So talking third round running backs here. Tajay Spears, standout at Tulane, really shifty running back, a little bit small. If the Broncos value him, I think you might have a shot at him at pick 67, 68. I could see him going, 60 all the way to pick 80. I think that's probably the range for him. The big caveat with Tajay Spears is that he suffered a pretty significant knee injury, I think 2 seasons ago. He looked healthy there. I haven't heard anything about the medicals for him, but really a standout at the Senior Bowl. Fun player.
Yeah, he's got some burst to him. This is one-on-ones here where he's getting the call out here. You don't get a chance to run quadruple moves, but that got a lot of hoops and hollers. But he's got some burst to him. Get him out in the open field, and he's got some speed. I think USC is still having nightmares. I think he had 4 touchdowns in that bowl game when Tulane maybe upset the Trojans, but it's hard to get a real good look at these guys, but he's got some run away from you type of speed in the secondary, which is really fun. Third round guy. Yeah, I'd be real interested in there. And want to say hello to Jeremy real quick, coming in with some stars. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the support over there on Facebook.
Yeah, appreciate you, Jeremy, coming in with the support. He did say go Big Red, so I guess I'll give you a go Big Red right back for that. Honestly, Scott, you're talking a little bit of Tulane. You've heard me mention this guy before, but Tajay Spears is probably the more darling prospect coming out of Tulane this season. He's not my favorite prospect coming out of Tulane, though. My favorite guy out there is, where is Ethan when you need him? It's the inside linebacker, Dorian Williams. He is a little bit lighter. You've seen the linebacker position get a little bit smaller over the last few seasons, but he's only 6'1", 228, but he ran a 4.4 940. And he has nearly 34-inch arm length out there. He was really impressive as a blitzer, really slippery, lining up over the A gap or the B gap, sideline to sideline speed, and looks pretty natural dropping into coverage too. I mean, he just kind of sinks his hips and then uses those the pterodactyl wingspan to play in zone coverage. So I'm a huge fan of Dorian Williams as well. Just wanted to give a shout out to him. There's been a few chances.
Who goes first?
I'm going to say Dorian Williams.
You think so?
Just because of the knee injury with Tajay Spears and the plethora of running backs so you can get rounds.
When was Tajay Spears' knee injury? Are you worried about him re-injuring it? Because he's looked pretty good in his last 2 appearances, which was Senior Bowl and bowl game.
It's just the medicals. I think there's like some stat, like if you suffer 2 knee injuries on the same one, then like the guys who come back are like, 5% or something. So the fact that he's already had that 1 strike, there's long-term concerns, maybe arthritis concerns too. And then that second one, if it does happen, is, kaput. Good night. So I don't know exactly when the knee injury was. I want to say it was 2021, but something that I know teams were greatly curious about with the medicals with him. So watch out for him. I think Dane Brugler, he's got him here as his 5th running back. So somebody to watch out for. He also dealt with a torn ACL and meniscus in September 2020.
The meniscus is nothing, but ACLs aren't, especially for guys that you're talking about having speed and agility at running back. Jeremy comes in, he says, I watch you guys nearly every morning. It was about time I started to contribute. You're my favorite MHHers. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We've had a lot of fun building this over the last 2 years. We're in year 3 now, Nick. Time flies. You're going to be old as I am one day here soon.
I'm already old. It's there. I'm like to wake up. I woke up this morning. I'm like, looked at my alarm. It said it was 4:50. I'm like, I might as well just get up. I mean, that's like I might as well get the coffee going. It's 4:50 a.m. Unbelievable. So had to start planning out some of my summer trips. You're gonna have to entertain me or something, Scott, in mid-June. My wife is gonna go head to Italy for 2 weeks. She's gonna be presenting at a conference in Turin. So, and she's making it a vacation as well. So I get to stay home and take care of the pets. La-di-da. But that's okay. I'll get to go to Idaho and do a big fishing backpacking trip at the end of July. Guys trip out there.
Trade-offs. You can do that kind of stuff when here's philosophy time here. For somehow the spouse got labeled as the ball and chain. Like my life didn't change that much when I got married. The ball and chain is when you start having dependence, whether it's
Kids and pets.
it's the dog.
Yep.
My cats were fine. I'd leave them for 3 days with a big bowl of food and come back. See you on Monday. They'd be like, yeah, whatever, go. The dog is an everyday type of thing. And then once you have kids, it's like, oh, marriage is hard. Marriage isn't hard. Marriage is hard. You married the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are hard. They're a lot of work. Kids are a lot of, you really have to work at a marriage. Dude, no. Kids are a lot of work. No question about that one.
Yeah, without a doubt. So circling back here, the Broncos trading up, possibility, just those stats again. Before we start to wrap on up this show, because Scott and I have things to do today. Saints traded up 16 times and down 0 times since 2011.
That's incredible.
That is over a 12, 13 draft sample size.
That's plenty of sample size. So I know, hey, listen, I want some more picks. Who am I calling? Hey, Saints. You want to come up?
Yeah. Pretty outstanding. And then the Vikings with 44 draft day trades, most of them down, but they kind of like to move up and down a lot. Late day 2, round 3. I mean, we've seen that with the Broncos as well, being a team that kind of hopping around the board. So when push comes to shove, what are your thoughts here for the Broncos? I'm not going to put you too much on the spot, but 67, 68, are the Broncos going to hold pat, pick both those guys? Are they more likely to trade up from 67, trade down from 68?
I mean, for right now, the easiest thing to say is they don't do anything. They stay put. When you're in a spot where you need to fill a couple of holes, wouldn't it be easier to do them right there than trading down? But with, you could come down with one of those picks, maybe. I think on the spot, they keep at least one of them. Mm-hmm. They keep at least one of them, and they're going for a guy that they can plug in as a possible starter in a position of not as big a value, like center.
Running back.
Or you go for some depth at cornerback. You go for some depth at wide receiver. You go for some depth at tight end. But there should be plenty of options there. When we run through, we see them. Now, for me, when I'm looking, I'm hoping one of my centers drops. Every time we do one of these mock drafts, that's what I'm hoping.
I think you're 100% correct on that. I'm also thinking the Broncos center's a possibility, and the other one you mentioned is cornerback. We've been doing these mock draft simulators, and there's always like 4 cornerbacks that we really like there. But there's a strong possibility that the wide receivers drop dramatically in this upcoming draft, and there's a strong run on cornerbacks picks 25 through 60, and the Broncos have like a list of guys, and they want to be able to come out with one of them. And let's say the centers go to, so you can see the Broncos, I think, maybe trade up for a cornerback as well. DJ Turner is a name that I think that we should keep an eye on. Obviously, Darius Rush, we've been talking about him a lot more the last few days just because he's for some reason ranked super low on the PFF simulator. You have
that's an easy one. He shouldn't get out. I mean, we talked about. I can never remember his name now. The kid from UTSA that the Seahawks struggled with. Tariq Woolen. Yeah. Don't make that same mistake. Darius Rush should not get out of the second round for all the same reasons that Tariq Woolen shouldn't have either.
Yep. Just I can continue with the names though at the cornerback position. Keely Ringo, he was somebody who we thought maybe was going top 10, top 20. Yeah. And now he's being mocked, end of the second round, but he's a physical athlete. I think he's got some potential safety ability as well. Definitely special teams upside. So he's one to keep an eye on there. I think he's a supremely talented, interesting player. We also talked a little bit about a guy like Tyreek Stevenson. Julius Brents mentioned him a good bit. So it's going to be interesting. I think you can obviously put away Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter Jr., Deontay Banks, probably also Emmanuel Forbes, even though he's really weird at 166 pounds. But there's a number of other cornerbacks there that could make some sense for the Broncos, and they definitely need them.
You should have options. Again, I've been preaching it for 6 months now. I'm not going to back off of it now. You should be able to, and you don't have to now. You've gotten your guard. Now you can go get depth. You brought in 3 players. A few months ago, I said I want 6 new linemen. You've got 3 in. I'll back that down and say 5. I still want to come out of the draft with 2 linemen, one way or another.
Yeah, I will say though, talking about cornerback, there is a line of demarcation for me, and I really want one of those guys where we could be talking about a trade, like somebody who had really good production that had a lot of hype coming into the season and played well on tape is Clark Phillips III, but he tested not great, and he is 5'9" with 29 1/8 arm length. You're talking about in a island press heavy man scheme for a guy that small playing in the Pac-12 where
out of Utah where they don't play much defense out west anyway.
Yeah, I You talking late third round for me, but I've seen a lot of people talk about, the Broncos should take him early third. I don't know. I really like the height, weight, speed guys on the perimeter specifically. Also, with teams changing how slots are playing right now, they're getting bigger, more big body tight ends. The Cooper Kupps who can dig out. You need a little bit more size and strength at the slot as well. I don't know where he's at. I think he's an off coverage guy all day, but I don't know if that's what the Broncos are going to do. I think you're going to see more press here going forward with Vance Joseph. So not for me, but Elliott D, possibility of trading for linebacker, Devin White, former of LSU, top 5 pick, Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He's really talented and he's a lot of fun and he's a really good blitzer. If he was available for a 4th round pick, I'd be at least, picking up the phone. The issue is that you're trading for him and then paying him a big contract. And I don't know if I'd want to pay what I think he's asking for. He is a player, and this is very true about a lot of things on defense. His over-aggression causes him to get out of place a lot, and it messes up the entire integrity of the structure of the back 7 of the defense. Like, you have this gap, and is your responsibility for this gap. If you don't play this gap right, it's going to be a big run, or you have this area in zone coverage. If you don't play this area right, it's going to be a big pass constantly for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Levante David pointing him in the right direction, and still he's over-pursuing, he's over-aggressive, he's missing his assignments. Great athlete, great in pursuit, amazing blitzer, but you can't have that. I would rather have the guy who's consistently doing their job, especially in the spine of the defense, versus the freak athlete. So I don't know. I don't know if I would do that. And we got
For me, I'll make it even a little easier. He's on a 5th-year option at $12 million. If they want to try and clear salary cap space, then they don't want to just move him and end up paying half his contract. And I don't think the Broncos can afford a $12 million linebacker right now.
I don't think he's going to come in at 12 because the trade is coming with a contract. That's why he wants out of Tampa so bad. Like he's saying, if you don't pay me, trade me. So I don't think he would.
But right now he is on a 5th-year option at 12. Yeah. So the extension, he ain't going to be cheap. That's for sure. I don't think the Broncos can necessarily afford him right now. Tiffany Silver making me blush a little bit. She says, coming in with a super chat, so I will address this. Scott, ladies want to know, boxers are brief? Yes. Actually, boxer briefs. Yeah. So we do go longer, for sure.
And Jeremy laughing at my linebacker talk here. So we have a philosophical difference.
Or he's laughing at Tiffany Silver, one of the two.
And Scott said he was going to undress the question. Is that what's going on there? So we got an OnlyFans account coming up here soon. Yeah, appreciate all you guys coming in today. We're going to have to start wrapping it on up. Scott and I got places to be, things to do. If Devin White was available for a 4th, I think you take a shot on the supreme athlete, especially with how much you want to blitz this upcoming season. But I don't know if I'm wanting to pay him massive bucks for a linebacker who is out of position fairly often. And it's the same thing with...
Sounds like a linebacker equivalent of Trevon Diggs.
Yeah.
But big plays both directions.
At least Trevon Diggs takes the ball away a lot. Yeah. You don't really see... Like, the turnovers change the conversation a tad with him. But the spine of the defense, you need to do your damn job. Like, who would absolutely lose their mind with Devin White? Bill Belichick. He would be screaming at him constantly because he's missing the wrong gap. Like, are you kidding me? You're getting benched.
And then you take away what makes him good. When the guys are afraid to make plays, then it neuters him, so to speak, kneecaps him. So
it's a rough one. And that's the thing about linebacker. I don't know if you remember, it was the draft before we started working together, but he tested really good. A lot of people loved him in Kenneth Murray coming out of Oklahoma. And that guy, he made a lot of highlight tapes, but because he was guessing so often and flipping his hips the wrong way and just biting on every single play action, he was out of position often. And I would argue that as many splash plays he made for the defense, he gave up twice as much because he was in the wrong position, overly aggressive, not doing his job. It's about the collective in coverage and in run defensive fits. And if you're not doing your job on that, the entire thing falls apart. So pretty rough on that one. Devin White, great player, again, talented, but if it was a 4th round pick and you had like 2 years of control left, or a 5th round pick like Mr. Okudah to the Falcons, I don't understand why the Broncos didn't do that. I'd have done that. But I think it's a no for me given the contract and everything.
Did you see that they're picking up part of the salary too? He's only costing the Falcons $3.5.
I did not see that.
Yeah. So it was the as part of the trade, it was a signing bonus was 5. His total compensation was supposed to be about 11. The signing bonus was 5. A roster bonus was 5, and then his base salary was 1. So he's supposed to come across with about $6 million.
Yeah.
or 5 and change, whatever. The Lions are picking up part of that, and it's only going to cost the Falcons about 3-6 and a 5th rounder. That's a good risk to take for a 5th round pick.
Yeah, I don't understand. Maybe there's something else going on there with Okudah. I don't know all the details, but it's just like what doesn't add up. Granted, I haven't put him under the
He's
microscope.
from Georgia. Maybe he said, "I'll I'll go quietly or whatever." I don't know what it was, but good deal. I know what's a good deal for us every day. Michael Garancio opening up the show, closing us down on Facebook. Says, "Great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em." Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
And Roderick Koch coming in. Some last contribution of the day is Nick related to Angel Gabriel with that light. The camera, we have good internet speed now, which is fantastic. But some reason the camera light kind of fades in and out. I have like one of those like YouTube lights that are behind the camera here, but I don't have those. Like Scott has like massive honker lights in front of him for a boxer brief underwear shoot or something. But we're gonna hopefully figure that out here at some point. Maybe have to get a camera added. And also got Keith Brugman coming in saying, I remember Devin Bush being debated when he drafted. I know he got injured, but no longer in Pittsburgh. I mean, he signed a vet minimum to go to the Chargers? No, the Seahawks. He signed to the Seahawks. So I'm really glad the Broncos, maybe they didn't do the best in that 2019 draft in hindsight. Noah Fant, Dalton Reisner, and Drew Lock with those 3 top 50 picks, but they didn't trade up for a top 10 linebacker who ended up being really poor. And
he's
probably
still making decent money. So he's on 3.5 at Seattle.
3.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
So still making that's pretty good money. That's Josie Jewell money. That's 3 times what Alex Singleton was making last year.
Yeah. I think Jewell's making $5 million.
He is now,
like
but
6.
when I first started, he was making. I think last year he was making 3. At the beginning of the contract, or the year before, he was at 3. So he did get a raise.
He was a rookie contract, 4th round. It would not be very big before that. But Ethan coming in, $25, saying, great show. Have a great weekend, everyone. Ethan, we had some linebacker draft talk in here for you too. So it's not all terrible. We didn't even talk Jack Campbell today. So and there's other linebackers too I'd love in this draft. Drew Sanders is another one who I think would be awesome. Drew Sanders went to Alabama, edge rusher, very high recruit. They moved him to that inside off-ball spot at Arkansas this last year. He's still learning the position, but he is fun to watch at Arkansas. I like Jack Campbell a little bit more. Maybe that's my biases kicking in there, but Sanders, an awesome player as well that can do a lot of the blitz stuff that you're looking for. So there's linebackers. There's your linebacker.
I hit that button that glitches them out. I don't know if you noticed that. Pay attention. Off ball.
Yeah. So any final Scots any final Scots?
Any final Scots thought? Yeah. No, just check us out again tonight. Mile High Huddle on Chad and Zach will be back. I'll be in the background this evening to kind of wrap up the week, and we're 2 weeks away from the draft. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks to everybody. We had a fun time in here today. Thanks for everybody for contributing through the chat. We really enjoy doing this in the morning.
Yeah, it's always fun. And now Ethan's just placating to me. He knows how to get me. He says instead of Moom, I'll say Campbell. As long as Jack Campbell doesn't go to the Raiders or some crap, I'm gonna be okay. I think I'd probably die a little bit if he was wearing the black.
He's going to the Chiefs.
They are pretty good at linebacker. So I'm doing David Cromello's show tonight, and he wants to do AFC West stuff. And I'm like looking at the Chiefs roster. I'm like, you know what? Linebackers like the one they could go anywhere besides like quarterback. Obviously, inside offensive line is fine, and their linebackers are pretty damn good in Kansas City. But Raiders, they need help, and that would hurt me a little bit. I would not be about that. So we don't want that. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. If you're listening after the fact, you're waking up because you got an infant or something, or you're going on a run or you're working out, want to find a podcast out there, make sure after you're listening to us, scrolling down, leaving us a 5-star review. It helps us a heck of a lot. I know that we're more on the live, YouTube live, Twitter live, Facebook live kind of thing, but helps us a lot if you guys go to Apple Podcasts too and Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. And also, as the ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share on YouTube. Click that bell icon so that way you know when we go live. Scott and I are pretty good, about 5 minutes after getting on there, because we have to have our little bit of, what's going on, how you doing, kids, weather. All right, cool, let's go. So
and then we do it for you. So that's just our dress rehearsal.
We just have to practice it a little bit. But it was a fun show today. And also Black Rain coming in here saying, what games do you guys plan to attend this year? And Jeremy Sean says, hopefully none for Nick, as many as possible for Scott. Well, Jeremy, my luck has changed because I did win a backpacking trip lottery. So maybe now I'm on a winning streak. Granted, I had another one that was old and it came back as a loss, and I'm 1 for 20 on those lotteries. But hey, the one that I won is extremely hard to get. So I am stoked to the max to do that. So maybe my tide's changing.
Once we get the schedule, when's that happen? June or so? You get your opponents, but then like June, when the schedule comes out, they'll within a few days they'll do Chad and Zach will announce the meet and greet, the tailgate, the MHH tailgate, and I'm planning on being there as well.
As long as they have it not in when I'm going to be backpacking.
And the joke for Jeremy is Nick has not attended a game that the Broncos have won, and I'm 2-0. I went to 2 last year. I went to Broncos 49ers and Broncos Jaguars, and they won both of them.
And I am 0 for 8. I want to say, in my life. So that's not very good. I think maybe I saw them in a preseason game when I was really young and they won.
Preseason doesn't count.
But I need it. I need a dub in there. So if that counts, then we'll take that. I cannot remember if they won. That's
only for baseball dads who put their stats in. Count that game. Make sure you click that game as yes, it counts for my kids' stats.
I'll be the baseball dad to get a Bronco dub on that scorecard. But shout out to everybody in here. Thank you so much. The chat was hopping today. Ethan coming in big. We got Tiffany Silver with the funny. Elliot D came in. Keith Brugman, of course, coming in. Appreciate you. Jeremy Burnett.
Robbie Red. Mark Schrader. Donna Willison coming in. And then David Cromwell several times. Thank you, David.
Gyla.
Jeremy coming in as well. Michael Ranquillo on Facebook. So lots of contributions and lots of fun today, and hopefully everybody had a good time.
And shout out again to Jasmine. Congrats to you and your husband on being on the nest. The baby boy coming. You guys are great. Always appreciate you.
Atlian. How do you say that? Because they say Atlien. She's from Metro Atlanta too.
Atlantean.
It's Atlian, Atlanta, Atlian. I'd go with Atlian.
Atlian. Well, I don't know. Better than
Atlian.
Atlantalite. Well, this Seattleite's got to get going. So appreciate you guys. Have a great one. You guys, we'll see you again on Monday. More draft content. Have a great weekend. Make sure you're tuning in again tonight for more Mile High Huddle coverage. Until then, continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.